What was that moment in your life that brought that transition in your belief system, in the way you looked at so-called God?
I'm very much opposed to those people that become very spiritual and sort of attack all religions.
Where is the middle way?
The middle way is understanding how you want to apply your rational thinking. If you say there's no meaning, the universe will show you no meaning.
As human beings, we give more importance to our thoughts than to our emotions. On what basis?
The brain is an organ polarity. The heart is an organ of singularity. And people don't get that because they think their identities are here.
On the other hand, we have this new world coming up, what we call as artificial intelligence. In this transition, what is it that we need to be mindful of for the humanity and for the generations to come?
I started researching AI and looking at what this will do to us as humanities. At the moment with social media, we can't distinguish reality from fantasy, but you take that into the realms of AI and with virtual equipment and glasses, we may become entirely dead inside. There is no soul to modern leadership.
Such a pleasure having you here, Rishad, on the podcast, The X-Monks Drive. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Gaurav. It's been such a pleasure to meet you and interact with you, and I'm super excited about this as well.
Yeah. And Rishad, all the conversation that we have had in the past, and then I went through all the work that you have done, the book that you have written, the podcast that you have been on to. I was in a huge dilemma that how should I be introducing you? And I know I will not be able to do justice to your introduction, the different countries that you have traveled, the books that you have written, the good work that you have done. Why don't you introduce yourself? And here, the invitation is to introduce yourself through the lens of a 8-year-old Rishad.
All right. Sure, Gaurav. It sounds good. There's a wonderful Einstein said, if you can't explain it to a child, then you haven't understood it yourself. So I like that introduction. Just a brief introduction. As you know, I'm not a young man, so it's been a lot of life experience, a lot of journeys. And as far as the corporate situation goes, I used to work in corporate, came from an IT background, networking, content management, and then did a lot of management stuff, sales things, traveled all over the world. And then I went into training. So did a lot of corporate training. That was a lot of fun. Being in front of a classroom, teaching is what comes naturally to me. My mom was a teacher as well. I went into leadership, into coaching, and I have, quite a few clients across the globe from so many different personalities and different ranges. So I developed a very strong understanding of people. I would say that my business focused on people, the people element, and connecting with people. And so in a brief summary, I went through the traditional leadership coaching, the traditional avenues on change management, on conflict resolution, and all of it was great. But I needed to take a step forward. And I always say that whatever we learn in academia is the groundwork. Even if you're a doctor, you're a lawyer, and then it's about implementation and speciality. And what I found that was most lacking in the greater sense was the soul of leadership. And for me, being someone that's so inclined to the spiritual path as you are as well, I want to connect deeper to my essence. And it became a personal journey of saying, I feel empty, I feel void, I feel, what's the purpose of all of this? Chasing goals, chasing numbers, chasing KPIs, chasing all the rest of it, which is very valuable. It's not discounting it. There has to be more. And that's what led me onto my specific brand of leadership coaching.
Thank you, Rishad, for sharing that. Rishad, interestingly, I remember one of our initial conversations where you spoke about that there was a time when you did not believe in God. And then there came a time when you started to believe in this superpower. You may call it universe, you may call it nature, you may call it God. What was that moment in your life that brought that transition in your belief system, in the way you looked at the world, in the way you looked at so-called God?
Well, I ended up writing an entire book on that specific topic. So it's a good question. And it led to a time when my life collapsed, when what I thought life was about and my meaning and my purpose all sort of came to an abrupt end. And it was a time of deep searching and a dark soul, a dark night of the soul, when you searching for that deeper truth and thinking, what's all this about? There must be a deeper meaning. And yeah, so you could say it was an awakening within me, which was a profound realization that surely there's more to life than this, the job, the money, relationship, because they're all collapsing. Even your health, even your life, friends dying all over the place. I've lost so many people in my life. And as you age, you lose more and more people, and you realize the fickle nature of life. So yes, and then I wouldn't say I discovered God again. I discovered the divine within me. Like you said, it's not a specific religious form that it takes. However, there's no discounting religion. I'm very much opposed to those people that become very spiritual and sort of attack all religions per se. And I'm quite adamant there's so much good in religions, there's so much good in culture, there's so much good in our heritage. And in the modern world, we like to throw it all out and say, I found God, and you know what? Everything else is rubbish. And I'm saying, no. You've got to bring it all in. You can't be so pig-headed, if you excuse the description. We have to look at the wisdom. We have to look at the knowledge. We come from a lineage, and that's what we were speaking about as well. The great lineage that we come from, the great traditions that we come from. We didn't discover God in the last 100 years.
Yeah, I'm not surprised with what you are talking about, because most of the work that you do is where you are trying to bring in the tradition from different geographies, different paths, different religion, and how that can be leveraged to live a more happy and peaceful life. Interestingly, you mentioned about there came a time when you started to question about what's the meaning of my life, what's the purpose of my life, and to finding the deeper truth. On one side, one of the philosophies talk about that how there is no meaning to life. And yet people are looking for that meaning in life. People are looking for purpose in life. And later on, what we expect is, what we see is that we get clinged to that purpose. What is the middle way? As they say in Buddhism, Madhyam Marg, right? The middle way. Where is the middle way?
Yeah, a very good question. For me, asking this question very deeply within myself, which I think most people reflect very deeply on. Is there a meaning or isn't there a meaning? And what's my purpose and what's not my purpose? And then we can look at reaching out to a specific religion or a specific way or a specific culture. But then there's that deeper essence of what is my meaning. When you talk about the middle way, you see the middle way understood from Buddhism as well. And if we look at Nagarjuna, who was one of the great Indian philosophers that we mentioned before, and I believe the text that he wrote was the Madhyamaka. So it's very interesting that you mentioned the middle way. And of course, the Buddhism is the middle way. But the middle way is the all-comprehensive way. It's not the limited way. You see, in Nagarjuna's philosophy and understanding, which he calls the tetralemma, it's very important to grasp, is that there's 4 possible ways of looking at everything. And that all of them are entirely correct. So is there a meaning? No. And that's true, right? You talk about the Hindus and the concept of Maya, there's no meaning. There's another way that says everything is meaning. And there's another way that says everything has meaning and doesn't have meaning. You see, so there's 4 different ways. So if we look at this in individuals, we say, is he a good man or is he a bad man? That's how we like to put people in boxes. He's a good man or he's a bad man. Maybe he's a good man, maybe he's a bad man. Maybe he's neither a good man nor is he a bad man. So now you open up, because in English we know about the dilemma. Dilemma is that 2 equal propositions that are both specifically bad. So how do I answer that question? The middle way is understanding how you want to apply your rational thinking. And that's, to me, when I bring in the concept from quantum physics. So I'm a huge fan of quantum physics and quantum understanding, because the quantum nature sort of takes everything that modern day science says on its head, right? Because we think about the particle, think about the wave, and they're two separate things. And quantum physics is saying particle and wave are just the same thing, depends how you measure it, right? So then they call it a wavicle, which is a wave and a particle, right? So we get this dual nature, and the important thing in all traditional teachings, especially that originate from the Eastern wisdom, from Buddhism especially, is the incorporating model of everything. So if we take in the quantum view, you see John Wheeler, who was one of this great quantum physicists, a revolutionary man, he says, out of all my studies in quantum physics, there's one thing that I can tell you for certain, is that we live in a participatory universe. A participatory universe means a universe that participates in how you think about something. So if you say there is meaning, the universe will show you meaning. If you say there's no meaning, the universe will show you no meaning. If you take a woman and you say, show me if I love you, you show them how much you love them, they're going to reciprocate that love and say, I love you back. You say, I hate you, they show you how much they hate you too.
What a beautiful concept, that our universe operates from a space of participatory, you mentioned. Yes. And whatever we ask, the universe is going to show us that. And whatever I'm seeking for, it would get validated. And what I'm not seeking for is going to get invalidated. Interestingly, what you just mentioned about the middle way is that it comprises everything. So that means Shunyata has, the emptiness has the wholeness, and the wholeness has got emptiness. And that's where they coexist. Wow, exactly. Wow. You know, interestingly, as you're just talking about, going deeper into the nothingness of life has been one of the subjects that I've been exploring. And in that nothingness, what I'm listening is wholeness exists. What do you think? What is an impediment for an individual to embrace nothingness and wholeness in this moment?
The impediment is the person, the individual, because we are designed to see duality. We are designed to see separations. And that's the compassionate approach. So for me, you can't call it ignorance. It's called by design. We have been designed this way, and for specific reasons. If you're trying to look at nature and you're trying to say, is there a tiger, or is it safe for me to go outside? You have to be able to differentiate between the tiger and nothing out there. And so you have to be able to see the opposing things. So of course, if you apply this to the nature of reality, you're going to have an issue. But if you look at why we're designed in a particular way, we can separate water from sand. So we're designed for separation. So the first thing is understanding that it's actually a benefit, not a limitation. In the realm of getting into our essential truth, our deepest knowing of ourselves, we have to embrace what the Vedas talk about our senses, because we have to go into our senses at this point if we are to embrace that. So the Vedas talk about our 5 traditional senses that we know about: sight, hearing, touch, smell, and so on. And then we have an extra sense, which the Vedas talk about, which they call thought. You see, our thoughts are senses. They are not our essential reality. So if we can say, I see a tree, it's a sight. If I say, I think of a tree, it's a thought. But is there a tree outside of thought and outside of sight? Can you hear a tree? Possibly. But if there's no hearing, is there a tree? If you can't touch the tree, can you taste the tree? If you remove all these senses, is there a tree? So we don't want to get too deep, but in fact, the reason why you think there's a tree is because of your senses telling you that. Now, in order for you to get to the essential truth of the nothingness, of the gatheredness, or the wholeness that you talk about, we have to go to another organ within us. And that's not the brain. You see, the brain is an organ of polarity. You have left and right hemispheres. You have the separations. You have the left eye, you have the right eye. Right down the middle, we're cut into 2 halves, right? But then we have the heart. The heart is an organ of singularity. The heart doesn't see in separation, it sees in gatheredness. So my whole teaching and my whole practice is to get people to tune into their hearts, to see reality.
This is mind-blowing what you just mentioned. Now, here are two questions. The first one, what I'm understanding is that separatedness is important to create a distinction between sand and water. And thus it helps us to survive in the so-called three-dimensional world. At the same time, when you're talking about the quantum physics and the world that you are inviting us to get into, we say it's important to let the concept of duality melt, where there's no separation. And again, coming back to what you mentioned, that in emptiness, the wholeness exists. In wholeness, nothingness exists. Now, on what basis should I decide that right now, in this moment, I need to operate from a space of separatedness, and here I need to operate from a space of non-duality? That's the first question. And it's coming from, because in your book, you have introduced the concept of conditioned mind and separate self. So let's start from here.
Yeah, that's a very good question. You ask such wonderful, useful questions. They're so deep. I think the audience will be able to connect to how deep your perceptions are as well. And I love that, because I get invited on some podcasts and it's shallow, and this is what excites me. And I can tell the depth and wisdom that you've encountered in your life as well. So thank you. It's an honor to be able to entertain such a question. So what ends up happening, a lot of people become very spiritual, and they grind my gears a bit, because they become, okay, everything is Maya, everything's a delusion, everything is, there's only the oneness. None of it's untrue. I totally get that. I totally say, yes, you're right. But then there is this existence that we live in reality. We need to go to work. We need to look at the tree. We need to cut down the branches. We can't say that the tree and the branch are the same thing, because we need to get the fruit off the branch, right? Because in that particular metaphor. So it's when you choose to, and that's the free will that we seem to participate in. I say we seem to, because a lot of people can question whether free will is real or not. But in that particular moment, you say, all right, what do I want to connect with? For instance, a lot of people in the West, especially who have come to India and China and Japan, have really embraced this. Now they live in lovely, cushy apartments in central London, in very nice little cushy environments. They're not exposed to the harshness of life, feeding the family, protecting your family, protecting your life, protecting your children. And they say all about this one way of looking at things. And I'm saying, no. So when do you go into which state? Is that what you want to feel in your deepest essence, and to uncover your truth? So when you want to do that, then you start disassociating from your senses. And so you start disconnecting from sight. Close your eyes, you can start listening to sounds first, and then you tuning in to that quiet space within you. But just to add on one last point is that a lot of people don't know the great mystic and poet that everybody talks about in the West. That's very famous, is Jalaluddin Rumi. Now, Jalaluddin Rumi was very well known, and he wrote in Farsi, a beautiful language as well. He and his family were being persecuted by the Mongol armies. They had to run away from where they were in Mongol territory, deep into a place which is now, I believe, Tajikistan. And they had to move. It was called Balkh, where he originated. So, and he had to basically make this great exile as he was going, witnessing the tribes of Genghis Khan slaughtering. And Genghis Khan was ruthless, as we all know, leaving the heads of the people, women, children, everything in piles up there. And I'm not gauging whether he's right or wrong. That's not my concern at all. But so in this craziness, he said, what's the point of all of this? It's so disturbing. It's so disgusting. I was like, I can't handle this. And in that, he found love. He found the highest form of understanding, that even Genghis Khan and the armies were all part of God's creation. And somehow that if you can find love in that madness, then you're a warrior. That's the warrior. It's like in that moment when you just want to kill everyone and get barbaric and implement justice, You will withdraw within. And you say, but this is all love. And to find love in the middle of war, it shows how great you are. It's like in a relationship when you and your spouse are fighting, where you stop and you say, I'm not doing this. I'm realizing that in her or in him is this true essence, this true beauty that came from love, that came from God. And so you stop fighting and you start falling in love. That doesn't mean that injustices shouldn't be stopped either. And that's where we have to understand that there are rules, there are traditions, there are religions, there are all these things. And that's where I separate a lot from the spiritual people who say, no, you're too practical. And I'm saying we live in a practical world. We need to be internally aware of what we're doing, very aware, but at the same time, we can't discard everything else. There are structures, there's rules, there's religions, there's obedience to parents, there's systems, there's societies. All of this is for the healthy functioning of society as well. Long answer, but...
No, but it's profound what you just mentioned, that in case I can find love in all the hatred actions from somebody, in case I can find love in the barbaric acts of people, that's being warrior. The question that I'm asking myself is, what kind of, I don't want to use the word mindset here because that would be too narrow an approach for me to understand. What kind of human set, if I may use this word, required, what kind of vibration that one needs to operate from to look at acts of hatred, anger, being barbaric as love?
That's you ask such profoundly deep questions. I love it. And thank you for not calling it mindset. I'm so tired of mindset. Everything is mindset. But just like we just mentioned with the Vedas now.
I don't know if there's a word called human set. I don't know.
I like that. I prefer
but let's
that.
stay with that.
Yeah. And I would go and call it Heartset, actually.
I
would say that's the only place we can discover our truth is within our hearts. And as we know from the Indian teaching as well, the heart chakra is not the heart as in we see this, this organ that pumps blood, which is an incredible organ, but centering within this part of you. It's your whole identity. And people don't get that because they're all in here. They think their identities are here. But I always ask people and they're like, get so surprised. They say, if I ask you, where are you? And you're in a crowd, right? You say, who, me?
I'm here.
You point, I'm here. Why are you here? If I ask you what's your name, you're going to think in your brain and give me the answer. Yet, when I ask you, where are you? You say, I'm here. So where is your identity? Where is the essence of who you are? It's here. And people, that's a simple answer to anyone. You go through all cultures and there's only one specific culture, I believe in some type of, in Yemen or something, where they point to their nose as their identity. It's quite profound because your nose is how you actually learn the world. How a child in the beginning phases get to know who the mother is through smell. How does the mother know who the child is? In fact, we get to recognize the world through nose, through smell. So that's really interesting as well. So yes, I would say that if we look at the words hatred, bigotry, violence, and all these rest of things, these are again terms that have been created. But let's play with it for a second. If we remove all terms, including love, because love has been plagiarized and hijacked, and so has kindness, and so has compassion. They've been turned into terms and have been loaded. They've been loaded. People don't realize language, and I've got this whole podcast where we unpack with a guy called Adam Widowski the foundations of language, because language holds the key. If I say compassion, we'll say be kind to this person, and you hear this on the internet everywhere. Kindness for everybody, right? But what is kindness? You see, so they've stolen the word. Because let me give you an example. When a leader tells one of his lower staff who says, I'm ready to take over the department, and he says, no, you're not. Oh, but that's unkind. You're not being compassionate. No, you see, you're not getting this. So then people are manipulated. They're manipulating others in the sense of terms and in the sense of names as well. So we have to be careful with names as well. But this heart set that we need to embody within us can only arise from one thing: awareness. If we don't have awareness, then we're on unconscious mode, and we're just constantly looking for words like violence, goodness, kindness. Even the good words are bad, right? Even the bad words may be good, because sometimes it may be appropriate to be unkind. Right? Look at the murder and killing and dying. It is one of the most merciful acts created by the Creator. It's not evil. Death and killing, if you look at the animal kingdom, it's savage, it's brutal. You look at nature, you look at plagues, you look at locusts, you look at typhoons, you look at tsunamis. The mind is polarized, it's all evil. Yet if you look at somebody who's been, and I had a friend who was on his deathbed for so many years, I was praying, I said, God, please take this man, it's enough now. Release him of his pain. Right? Because he realized he doesn't want to live. Of course, your first prayer would be to him, make him better. But there was at some point where he says, I no longer want to live. And so death becomes this great, majestic gift. So we can't look at nature like we look at nature. And I talk in the book about the story of the lions. I don't want to go on too much, but to keep your questions in line. But we really have to understand in nature, just quickly, you'll see 3 lions killing a wounded deer, right? And you'd say, oh my God, please go rescue the poor deer because the lions are killing them. And I talk in detail about this particular incident. They found 3 weeks later, all 3 lions were dead. Died of starvation. That deer that the rangers saved died a week later from its injuries. So who was right and who was wrong? And can you see the mercy and blessing of nature as well?
That's
in what we call evil.
That's nature's way of conversing with humanity. What is right, what is wrong, I don't know. Just curious, the space of awareness that we are just dwelling into right now, Rishad. And what we are talking about, it's so important to operate from a space of awareness, to operate from a space of Heartset, to look at what kindness means. How can we integrate that in the corporate world we are living in, when what the person is experiencing is a very different reality, where the person is questioned based on numbers, on KPIs, on KRAs. And here we are talking about there's another way of integrating this philosophy into your day-to-day life. So how can we integrate that?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. Again, all your questions are good. But what's the practical implementation of all of this, which is what I very much focus on, is how do we make this into a reality? So simply by looking into myself, into my own journey, and I'm bringing the same way of looking at this world and into my job and into life from inside out rather than from outside in. So what we first have to do is disconnect and regain connection with our hearts, with our essential natures, with our essential truths. And then say, from this point of awareness, how do I then infuse and instill this ethos into my team for a start? Because that's going to create this incredible synergy. And this is science of emergence that I talk about as well, how when you are emitting this frequency, and this frequency is so deep and it's vibrating so high from your heart, that you start infecting in a good way the team with the same energy that you're embracing. And so you elevate everybody by this. So now you're saying, okay, I need to fire this guy, right? Because he doesn't meet this particular requirement. And you are heart-centered and you are aware. You realize, okay, so there's my boss telling me to do this, and there's this man who may have a family and all the rest of it that's important. Precisely. And because I am a compassionate being, understanding his true nature, the boss's, as well as the staff's true nature, and connecting deeper within their essence, I go about it very differently. And remember something, when you're aware and deeply centered within your being, you don't have confusion anymore. You're operating from a higher realm of awareness. And this is what I call heart-brain coherence. This means that your heart and your brain are in alignment. What's happening these days is that it's an expression in English. They say, there's a part of me that wants to do that, and there's a part of me that doesn't. The part of you that wants to do that is your heart generally, and the part that doesn't is your brain. And your heart calls you for bravery, for courage, for nobility. Your brain calls you from fear and running away. So then I would approach both people and say, listen, Mr. Boss, I am being appointed as your leader, but there's some things that I need to tell you because they're not fearful. A person that lives from their heart realizes that a job is a job, but people are more important and my essential nature is more important. And say, look, if I'm going to get rid of this man, this is how we need to do it. And that requires courage. And that requires you to have so much faith within yourself. You see, it's not that we don't trust other people. It's that we don't trust ourselves. Why don't we trust ourselves? Because we don't know ourselves. We don't know our essential truth. And we don't know our own power, our own essence, because we're too caught up in our heads. So once you know this essential light that you are, and you start spreading this energy of generosity, which is all, if you look at the teachings of Buddhism and all religions, is about a compassionate being, about gratefulness. And so when you start living on this frequency of gratitude and of compassion and of generosity, and you're a generous being, you go to your boss and your boss sees this generous being coming to them. They're no longer seeing this person who's got the right words to choose. They're living from their hearts.
So beautiful. You know, you used words like the light that you are. You use the word like your central truth. You use the word called true nature. So again, I've got two questions here. One, how can I initiate my journey? What are the steps that could help me, that's going to propel me towards my light, the central truth, and the true nature? That's one. The second one is, what are the steps that could help me to deal with my fears and my insecurity and whatever evolves because I don't know myself?
It's actually quite easy to start the process for both these things that you're discovering, what you're talking about, is to first disconnect from the noise for a moment and to focus on an intention. You see, again, when we talk about the quantum universe, there's two very important things that quantum research has found. How John Wheeler talking about the participatory universe, you need a strong intention and an elevated emotion for you to be able to change matter, for you to be able to have an influence on change within yourself and on the environment and on everything that you want to influence. So starting off with a strong intention, saying, I want to live from my essential truth, from my being, from my heart. I want to live from courage. I want to live from truth, from authenticity. It's an intention, along with an elevated emotion. And so it's not fear-based, you see, because fear destroys intention. Fear paralyzes action. Fear demotivates you. Fear is the most destructive force in human nature for you to enable change. So what you do is you use an elevated emotion. For instance, if you say to the team, if we don't get these measurements, then we're all going to lose our jobs. And you think, as the leader, you're motivating them. No, what you're doing is you're demotivating them. And you've now created the wrong intention because now everything is holding back in its fear. There's another approach and say, guys, we've got a tough quarter. Imagine the possibilities if we times 2 our potential this quarter. What can we do? And now you're having an elevated emotion and you're saying, imagine what it would be like if at the end of this quarter, we all get bonuses and we go to that restaurant and we all take a week off. Now the team is in a very different dynamic there.
Yeah. You know, as I was just listening to you, I would actually see what was happening to me, how my body disposition was moving. One was moving away from something and one was moving towards something. So you spoke about first, disconnect with that inner noise. Second, have an intention and the elevated emotion. Now, interestingly, you also mentioned fear destroys intentions. Fear destroys our actions. You spoke about heart, you spoke about emotions. I'm just wondering, as human beings, we give more importance to our thoughts than to our emotions. On what basis the human race has decided that we should celebrate thoughts more than emotions, whereas it's our emotions that help us to connect with each other. It's our emotions that help us to express ourselves, that we should celebrate thoughts more than emotions.
I think let's just first expand on what an emotion is, because I think that's where we need to differentiate a couple of different categories. So you could say there's three essential ways of distinguishing or understanding ourselves. So we have intelligence, we have intuition, and we have instinct. We could look at this as the three different types of brains within our systems as well. We know we have the animal, and then we have the second part, which is the midbrain, and then we have the neocortex, which is the more advanced type of thing. Just to sort of summarize as much as possible, as if I can here, is that there is this instinct within us, which is the drive, we could say the animal understanding, or the primate or primal type of level. And then we have the secondary, which is more emotions based. Now, emotions, if we look at it from a chakras point of view, they align very nicely as well. That's what I love about integrating all this wisdom along with modern day understanding. It all aligns, and I believe the ancient wisdom is superior as far as I'm concerned. If we look at from the chakras point of view, from the bottom, we look at the root chakra, and then we look at the middle chakra, which is your heart, and then we look at the top chakra, which is the alignment with all the rest of it. In between that, we have the third eye, which is very, very vital here. And that's where your intuition arises from your third eye and from your heart center. So when we talk about emotions, emotions can be plagued with negativity as well, because on the other side of emotions, we have like, I hate him, I feel terrible, and those are also emotions as well. So I would say what's happened that is fatally, just to clarify your question, when did we elevate intelligence over intuition?
Yeah.
Because intuition is knowing that when I look at a man and he comes to me and I see his face, and like you just displayed so beautifully, I felt my body as you were speaking. That is your intuition interpreting what your body is saying. So you're not analyzing, neither are you emotionally. You're sensing and you're intuiting. You're taking environmental variables and you're saying, what's going on here? And then something in you says, I think it means this way. And then thought comes last. So there is a feeling within your body. If you look at attraction as well, like I feel attracted to this person, and that starts off at one level. And then there is the intuitive, then there's the intelligence. Why do I like this person? And then finally, it's the intuiting. And intuiting comes from our deeper sense, what they may call the sixth sense. So that's how I would categorize these particular things. It's a wonderful subject. And what's really interesting, all of these words start with what? In. They're within us. Intelligence, intuition, instinct. So how do you get this knowledge? From within.
Yeah. So going further within, here's the question. When it comes to intuition, how can I further develop my intuition, and how can I harness that?
Well, the answer is staring us in the face, especially from the Indians. It's so great because the Indians, the region of India, has got so much for us to gather. We've got yoga, we've got pranayama, we've got all these different breathing techniques, and there is entire science around it. And then from the Sufis, we also have that as well, that originated as well. And then we have that from Taoism. So the East has been predominantly those people that tapped into their intuition. And you see, we've discounted these superpowers that you get, these six senses, this teleportation. All these things have been reduced to garbage. But you know, when somebody's not well that you love, there's a sense. Or when the phone rings, it's the typical thing. I mean, you can't tell me that doesn't happen. In fact, this man named Rupert Sheldrake, who wrote a beautiful book on the 10 dogmas of science, he says he did a study that you can predict when someone that you know is going to call you with an accuracy. I think he did it something like 45 or 50%, which is beyond the ambiguousness. You can predict. And so when you're tuned in, and in fact, what they've discovered now is that the heart, according to HMI HeartMath Institute, can 6 seconds before an event occurs, the heart knows about. 6 seconds. So they were showing people random pictures. The people knew what picture was coming next before the picture appeared. So by you tuning into intuition, you can predict the future before it happens. I mean, talk about a superpower. So there's a lot in this that we've discarded. And the Tibetans, the Indians, the Mayans, the Japanese, the Chinese, they can do these things which we call supernatural feats. It's it's within us all. Within.
Let's change the gears. Since we are talking about the supernatural beings, you spoke about the intuition. We spoke about that, how we can actually understand, how we can actually realize what's going to happen to me in the next 6 seconds, right? So on one hand, we have this world of intuition. On the other hand, we have this new world coming up, what we call as artificial intelligence. In this transition, what is it that we need to be mindful of as leaders today who are responsible to ensure that we create something which is good, not only for ourselves, but for the humanity and for the generations to come? What is it that we need to be mindful of?
Yeah, this is so important and a huge passion of mine. As you know, I'm an AI transition specialist. I started researching AI and looking at what this will do to us as humanity. So the question is very, very relevant. As leaders, as people in charge of others, I don't believe we have an option right now but to do exactly what we've been talking about on this podcast, which is
Precisely.
Awaken within. Listen to your heart, listen to your awareness, connect to your intuition. Otherwise, at the moment with social media, we can't distinguish reality from fantasy, but you take that into the realms of AI and with virtual equipment and glasses, we may become entirely dead inside. I was actually just finishing off a post right now saying how modern leadership has lost its soul. There is no soul to modern leadership. That's now. But when we got AIs leading your department, you're going to have a very different situation. So rather than saying, and the one hand is, yes, what can we do for our people? And that's a very nice, generous approach. But I'm saying you need to think about your future as a leader, because your future is not guaranteed. And again, this is not fear-based. What I'm saying is that everything is going to evolve. And if you don't connect to this essential nature and your team are not on the same frequency as you emotionally, feelings-wise and intuitively from your heart, you're going to be entirely disconnected from everyone and everything. Because everything, so what they did right now, which just freaked me out, is that I was reading from the Tao Te Ching, which is this wonderful ancient text that I speak in depth about. And someone sent me a link of Alan Watts, who was, very famous in the 70s, and he quoted from the Tao Te Ching. And here's Alan Watts reading the entire Tao Te Ching. And I know Alan Watts hasn't read the entire Tao Te Ching. They managed to, and I have one of my coaches is a specialist in hearing and in audio, and they said, she said, they've mastered the entire timbre of his voice. So the whole characteristic of his voice is that you can hear it's him, but she said, they've taken the soul out of him. Because when you're listening to it, there is no soul anymore. So you're hearing what supposedly is Alan Watts. And if you're not connected to your soul, you're going to be listening to this garbage, which is meant to be talking about an ancient text. Yet everything is in the transmission. I'll say that again. Everything is in the transmission. The most important, profound message that you've ever been given in your life was from a person in your heart, from your mother, from your priest, from your wise friend, from a child. It was that transmission, and you said, oh, because your heart, as a coach, as coaches, we know what's happened is that something from our heart is being transmitted. And that's what I teach all my coaches, to imagine when you're speaking, you're not speaking through your mouth. I force them to imagine as if though your words are coming from your heart. And I insist on my coaches that when you're speaking to someone on an online system, that their heart is exposed, so that you're connecting and you're reciprocating heart to heart. See how you move back there intuitively? So we are connecting heart to heart, which is amazing. So in the age of AI, if we don't start doing this, our souls are going to dry up. And the problem is that if your team is going to be the same, you're going to have a dead team.
No, it's more concerning because In this entire conversation, you used the word soul 3 times. The first time you spoke about soul of leadership. The second time you spoke about that the modern leadership has lost its soul. And third time you just used that. I'm just wondering first, what is the soul of leadership? That is the first question. The second one is, how can we make so-called the slaves of the modern corporate era understand the importance of having that soul of leadership?
Well, Gaurav, one thing I have to say, you can tell you come from a coaching background and you're very aware. There's one thing that you've done throughout this entire conversation is be so aware of every word that I've used and the context that I've used. And I think that is a superpower of the future that you and I have, and we can recognize it. But you'd be surprised how many leaders, how many employees lack this intense listening ability, which is going that if you have the ability to be entirely present and aware and in tune with somebody's saying, you can make the most dramatic improvements in your life and anybody else's life. So just to highlight there, yes, I've used the word soul. It's one of the most important superpowers of the future is being aware, being totally present, that there's nothing you bring in. And like I said, I tell my coaches, and I'm sure you tell your coaches as well, is that everything you're doing and everything that's going on in your head, you park off. You bring 100% of yourself as you brought here and I brought here. And that's why you can see the quality of this discussion. There is no ego. There is no ulterior motive. There is simply two human beings sharing and interacting. This, Gaurav, has the potential to change the world. As simple as it sounds, just this interaction and this ability to interact has the profound ability to change the world. But you can come back to that. To answer your question, the soul. The soul is what ignites the passion within us. Now, we don't have to make it into a religious understanding of the soul. We keep it simple. I would say you can use the word soul with the word heart. What awakens your heart, what feels right within you, what feels deeply nourishing within you, what makes you feel alive is what you should follow and ignite, and most importantly, to energize and to reestablish, to reaffirm, to strengthen the organ of the heart, of the soul, to awaken. So I teach myself and to my clients, it's like a battery. You got to get that heart of yours. And when you do that enough, when someone sees you, they can see it in your eyes. They can see somebody's heart who's awakened in their eyes. And that energy changes the world.
Wow.
They say there's 3 sides of the story. There's one side of the story, the other side of the story, and the truth. Right? Now, in order for you to establish the truth, you need to be able to say, dig deeper into this whole thing. You can't even look at the person in front of you until you've looked at yourself.
Yeah. What a mind-blowing conversation. You can't even imagine how much I'm enjoying this conversation, Rishad. You know, this conversation has shifted the way I used to look at warrior when you mentioned that how a warrior is someone who can see love in hatred, who can see love in barbaric acts. And right now, when you use the word ninja, it has again shifted my perspective of ninja is not somebody who fights. A ninja is someone who observes, who is a watcher of his own biases, watcher of his own prejudices, watcher of what's bothering her or him. It's a very different way of looking at life. And just wondering, Rishad, how has this entire understanding of what you are going through in your life has changed your relationship with yourself, your relationship with others, your relationship with this world?
I wish I could get people like you interviewing me more often. This is such an important question. The most profound way possible. That's why it's my whole ethos, and you can see I wear my passion on my sleeve. I'm done with pretending to be this or that. If you don't like it, you don't like it. And because if you see there's no ego in it, of course you're going to like it, because I'm talking to your soul. It changed me entirely. My relationship with my children is profound. My relationship with my staff and with those around me is profound. It's not that they think of me as a lovey-dovey, cuddly teddy bear. It's just that they know where they stand with me. And I think that's the most satisfying thing. And with myself, it's such an important question, because in the book, I wrote this book about my specific personal journey. That was what it's about. This is my journey into finding myself. And then I said to my wife, I wrote in the book that, what did I get out of this long journey? What did I get? And I said, did you read that part yet? It was an introduction. I said, I've never felt so comfortable in my own
in my
skin.
own skin. Yeah.
That's
I wanted to understand that from you. What does that mean to be comfortable in your skin? And that's what you told your wife. Now I can relate to what you're talking about.
You see, many people don't know their other side. Everybody knows what a nice person they are. Everybody knows how useful they are and how everybody else has a problem and you don't, or many people have a problem and you don't. And it's their fault, and it's this fault, the government's fault, and it's this fault. And I know all that part about me. I had to, and it was not nice. You see, if your transformation on this journey is comfortable, you're not on a journey of transformation, you're on a journey of deception. So people read a self-help book on, I read the spiritual book of the century written by an academic from Harvard, right? And now I am enlightened. No, you're not. You're not. So you go through that churning within you, and you uncovering, hold on, you mean I'm also pretending to be a great person when I'm also a scoundrel, right? And then I'm blaming my wife, but actually it's me that's the problem. Yeah. When you do that to yourself, it doesn't feel nice. But what comes out of that is this robustness. So you don't go wherever you look. What do you see when you look everywhere? You see yourself. And if all you see is good, then all within is good. And if all you see is bad, all within is bad. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. And this is what I often share with people. The moment you start to see shit in yourself, rather than blaming the world, because the world is stinking according to you. And if you can say that, no, what, the world is not stinking, but I need to clean up my own shit. I think that day, that moment is a moment where you can say that, you know what? You are becoming the human being that you deserve to be, that you are moving in the right direction. Thank you so much, Rishad. I could not ask for more. Such a pleasure having you on this podcast. Thank you so much.
Well, the pleasure has been all mine. I so much enjoyed it, and I hope people benefit from this and take a decision with a strong intention and elevated emotion to go into trust and to go into themselves and to reach out if they need any assistance of that. Was one of my best podcast interviews, and I'm not just saying that. So it shows the remarkableness of you as well and what you are. And today it was very apparent to me, and I think can be apparent to listeners as well. I think that you're just a genuinely aware human being, and I think to me that is the highest achievement to me. It's not about how rich you are or how smart you are, but how aware you are. So thank you, Gaurav.
Thank you so much. And I look forward to our conversations and having you again on this podcast.
I'd love to. Thank you.
You're correct.